Welcome to this Sahara 4 exercise. In this exercise, we will create an original oil in place map for our project using the grid operations tool. For that, we will first go to our Sahara project, and once here, we will select the first step is to load the original oil saturation for all the layers. This original saturation refers to the oil saturation at the start of the project, not necessarily at the start of the secondary recovery. That's the value or the data that we use for the simulator. In this case, we need to load the original oil saturation. For that, we will go to layers, data, and here we will have the original data. As you can see, we don't have any value here in original saturation, so we will load for all of them 45%. Just I'm sorry, this is in fraction 0.5, so it will be 0.5 like this. So now we have 45% or 0.45 for all the layers in the project. So now this makes sense if you review with the Conat saturation that we have defined here in the water flying data. um, for the for the for the water flying data we have here here, sorry, for the mobilities data we have defined the connect water saturation as 0.55. So the opposite of that, the complementary value to reach 1 will be 45%, which is the reason why we define 45% for all of the layers in the for the original saturation. So with this value here, we will now go to the grid operation tool. So tools, grid operations, and here we will have available the original in place map oil in place here. So with oil in place, we will define it as the here. Remember when we saw the grid operations exercise, you can review it as well. It's one of the exercises that has been loaded in the tutorials. Here the variables that have this IGK here are belongs to maps. That means that it has 3 points, like you have an x coordinate, a y coordinate, and a value. So this is belongs to a map, and the ones that have just a k belongs to the layer level. So in this case, we will multiply by a saturation that has been defined at the layer level. So we will use this tool here. This means that we will use the pore volume map that is loaded. We have reviewed earlier, we have loaded in this project, and now we will multiply by the saturation, the original saturation defined just now at the layer level. That's why it only has a k here, and we have an I, G, and k here, divided by the factor, well, the volume factor for oil, also defined at the layer level. So now we will we will allow the calculation for the whole area and for all the layers, and now we will calculate. And now we see that we have some layers that have invalid values because this layer were added later, or there are formations. So that's okay. We don't need to calculate it for these layers in particular. The rest of them were calculated correctly. And the 29, we already have some issues with this layer before because it doesn't have any pore volume data, because the layer has never been perforated, has never been injected. So we don't have any information for that layer, but that's okay. We don't care about that particular layer. So now our map has been calculated and we can review it on the map window. For that, we will close here in grid operations, and let's select the new map in the variable here in the configuration of the map, oil in place. So now we can select it here, and now we are checking the oil in place for this layer, the layer number 17. So I will change this gamma of colors to better reflect the idea that we are plotting oil in place. So in the places that we have lower oil in place, I will paint it in yellow, and in the places that we have higher oil in place, I will paint it in green. So now we can see that we have a higher oil in place in this central area here in this layer. And remember that we can add more layers by clicking on Ctrl or Shift to select several layers, and by clicking in all of them in the layer tab here at the top, we can see that we have the whole oil in place for the project. So remember that the aggregation function is going to be defined as a sum. In the case of maps, we can modify it by clicking here. We can have, for example, we are checking here the sum of the original in place in all layers, but we could have the average, or for example we could have the maximum. This is the minimum, sorry, and we can have the maximum as well. This will show the maximum of every map in this in the project. So we will have a map showing all the different maximum values of the original in place. But in this case, I think some will make the most sense. So that will be everything for this tutorial. We have calculated the original in place based on the layer data that we had, the original oil and the volume factor for oil as well, original oil saturation, sorry, and also the pore volume map that we had before. We have checked how selecting different layers, the original in place maps are going to be added one on top of the other, and how we can modify this function here. So yeah, that will be everything for this tutorial, and thank you for watching. Have a great day.